We would like to restore normal economic relations with Russia as we've had them for decades. So that is our aim. This is necessary also for the German economy to revive. You may be aware that we have the highest energy costs in Germany worldwide, and that's the reason for the recession that we've had in economy for two consecutive years now. So we have a deep-seated interest to restore normal relations with Russia as we've had them before. We are for the lifting of the sanctions against Russia as they do exist currently. And that would be a major step also to bring about a new peace and security structure for Europe as a whole.
The world is changing quickly. We've been covering that a lot on the programme this week, and there'll almost certainly be more change at the weekend when the Germans go to the polls. The new Trump administration favours the AfD party. JD Vance snubbed the German Chancellor when he was in Munich, but did meet the AfD leader. The AfD say they want to be German at heart, and they would rather have larger families than more immigrants. The other parties consider the AfD far right and refuse to go into coalition with them. Hans Neuhoff is an AfD member of the European Parliament and a professor of sociology and musical psychology, and joins us now. Good morning.
Good morning from Brussels.
Morning. Your take first on what we've been hearing overnight from Donald Trump towards President Zelensky. The comments essentially that Zelensky is a dictator, that he should hold elections and he hasn't, and that he's running out of time. What do you make of that?
Well, the main point is that elections in Ukraine are due. At that point, Trump is right. And I think it's part of his strategy to put pressure on Ukraine, especially on Zelensky, to bring about a peace solution. And politically, we support Trump's approach.
So would you like to see Germany then adjust its approach towards Ukraine and Putin?
Excuse me?
Would you like to see Germany adjust its approach towards Ukraine and President Putin?
Well, we believe also on the European level that what is required is diplomacy, and we advocate that the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Policy, Mrs. Kallas, should in fact invite the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, to Brussels to exchange with him and to bring about normal relations between Europe and Russia.
Do you believe it's possible to have normal relations between Europe and Russia at a time when there is still a war being waged in Ukraine?
Not at short notice, but in the long run, we'll have to live with Russia as a neighbor of Central and Western Europe. And for decades, in fact, the economic relations with Russia have been quite good indeed. And it's only about the war in Ukraine, the causes of which may be disputed, but it's certainly too simple to think that this is just a war of a new Russian imperialism, which threatens Europe as well. Things are more complex, and fortunately, the Trump administration is ready to address the deeper causes of the conflict.
So I'm going to take from that you would not support Germany sending any troops, any peacekeeping forces, any military support to the border with Ukraine as to
right.
act as
We do not support that.
And there is never a situation where you would support that.
Well, this is a kind of a hypothetical question. First of all, let's wait for the results of the negotiations, which are supposed to take place between Trump and Putin himself. And then we can discuss the scenarios more in detail.
But I mean, I suppose the question, if you take a step back, is do you feel comfortable with the idea that you could work with, negotiate and talk to President Putin? He's an incredibly unpredictable leader. He has killed his opponents before. He rigs elections as a matter of course. Do you really believe that as a democratic country, Germany could work with Russia?
Well, I think here you have to make a difference between internal policy, that is Russian internal policies, and Putin as an actor on the international scene. On the international scene, he's actually quite predictable. He's a rational politician, and you can calculate actually the turnout, the result from what you do and what he will do. So he has a rational approach, and we should build on that.
Can you separate those things out, though? I mean, he kills his opponents.
Well, as I just said, we are speaking here about international relations. And in international relations, not only Putin, but also other Russian leaders have made it clear that NATO membership of Ukraine is the brightest of all red lines for Russia. And although this was quite well known in the West, we pushed forward in that direction. We doubled down in spite of all the warnings. And the result is the war, which from the Russian perspective, let me emphasize, from the Russian perspective, is a protective war. I would not subscribe that from international level, but from the Russian perspective, it has to be seen like that. And to this point, Putin was quite predictable indeed.
Just finally, there will be a lot of people listening to you talking who may not have a full kind of understanding. They're not as engrossed in German politics as you are, obviously. Your party, Alternative for Deutschland, is polling in second place at the moment. I mean, that is quite a moment. Can you explain your country's attitude towards what you are saying? Is Germany supportive of working with Russia? Is Germany supportive of Putin? Has something changed quite significantly in Germany?
See, politics, we often have the problem of a black and white painting. So we are not a pro-Russian party, but we are not an anti-Russian party as well. We would like to restore normal economic relations with Russia as we've had them for decades. So that is our aim. This is necessary also for the German economy to revive. You may be aware that we have the highest energy costs in Germany worldwide, and that's the reason for the recession that we've had in economy for two consecutive years now. So we have a deep-seated interest to restore normal relations with Russia as we've had them before. We are for the lifting of the sanctions against Russia as they do exist currently. And that would be a major step also to bring about a new peace and security structure for Europe as a whole.
But, I mean, my question is, do you have the support of the German people? I mean, you're obviously polling in second place in the polls, but there are many people in Germany who say you are far too right-wing to go into coalition with. They are deeply concerned about some of the things your party's co-leader has said in the past. They feel very uncomfortable with the rise of the AfD. What would you say to that?
Well, let me clarify 2 points here. One is that AfD certainly is not an extremist party. I'm aware that in the media we are labeled as that, but it's obvious that this is political propaganda in order to damage our eligibility. That's the most important point. And secondly, in the recent polls regarding the Ukraine war, more than 50% of the German population approve that this war should be brought to an end by means of diplomacy. And as a matter of fact, AfD is the only party which supports that view, whereas the other parties, notably the Christian Democrats with Friedrich Merz as the coming Chancellor of Germany, choose rather a way, a strategy of, they call it strength, but it's in fact a strategy of aggression towards Russia, for instance, by allowing the German Taurus missiles to be sent, to be directed towards the Russian homeland. This is certainly another red line which would be crossed and which would involve us directly into the war.
Hans Neuhoff, Alternative for Deutschland, member of the European Parliament and a professor of sociology and musical psychology.
You're
Many
welcome.
thanks for your time. Thank you.